전쟁으로 폐허가 된 아프리카 국가 수단이 인도주의 위기에 직면했습니다. 내전이 시작된 지 1년이 지난 지금 수천 개의 학교와 병원이 문을 닫았습니다. 수단 교회를 섬기는 하드와이어드 글로벌의 티나 라미레즈 회장이 자세한 소식 전해드립니다. 내전으로 인해 어린이 1,400만 명을 포함해 거의 1,800만 명이 기아에 직면했으며 800만 명이 난민이 되었습니다. 수단의 작은 기독교 공동체 역시 타격을 입었습니다. 150개가 넘는 교회가 파괴됐고 많은 수의 선교사들과 사역자들이 섬기던 지역을 떠나야 했습니다.
Just last week, we were doing programs for our organization Hardwired, which promotes religious freedom around the world, in Juba in South Sudan. And it's, in talking with the Christian leaders there, it was a gathering of college leaders from universities, Christian college leaders from across South Sudan. All of them are deeply troubled by what's happening in the north because you really can't separate what's happening in Khartoum from the rest of Sudan or South Sudan. The countries are so intertwined with their histories and the people and their families. And in Sudan, as your colleague mentioned, millions of people have been displaced, have had to flee. Tens of thousands have been killed. And for the churches in particular in the north, it's been extremely hard because they're some of the poorest of the poor. They don't have any representation really in the country that can speak for them politically. And so they have just been surviving. And churches have been attacked. They've been used as barracks for the military operations. Many people have died within the churches. It's just extremely frightening. Never before have the Christians in Sudan seen this kind of fighting in Khartoum. It's happened in the Nuba Mountains and in Darfur and all over the country, but for it to come right into the heart of the city where the majority of the population has just completely uprooted everybody. And the church is just displaced all over the country and even outside of the country right now.
현재 수단의 상황은 그 어느 때보다 심각하지만 국제 구호는 부족합니다.
Well, I think that the failure in Sudan, as in South Sudan, occurred a long time ago. This is nothing new. The United States was very interested in Sudan. I actually was involved and first traveled to Sudan as a congressional staffer for the U.S. Congress, helping to move forward the comprehensive peace agreement negotiations back in 2007. And that led ultimately to the secession of South Sudan. But since the secession of South Sudan, I think there was a false sense of peace between the two countries. And since then, obviously, Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in 2019. My company had been training leaders in Khartoum since 2013 to help rebuild the country and fight for religious freedom in the Constitution. But there's a sense internationally, I think, of fatigue in Sudan because of the long war. There was a false sense of hope. Unfortunately, there's this misnomer that somehow just because you have an election, you're somehow now a democracy, and that's just not the case. And military rulers and strongmen, with them in power, there's never going to be peace. And so working and trying to negotiate them has always been a failure of foreign policy, both for the United States and around the world. And that's what happened even with the fall of Omar al-Bashir in the north. We've seen that even in South Sudan when the South seceded. It devolved into a civil war, into chaos. This idea that you can transition from military rule to civilian rule is something that we need to reconsider and really take seriously because the people of Sudan are suffering now. The situation there will be no peace without a ceasefire, without serious peace and reconciliation, without an international force that's going to enforce these values of democracy and freedom that the people of Sudan had fought so hard for. So it's very tenuous right now.
수단은 종교 간 갈등이 아닌 무슬림과 무슬림 사이의 전쟁 중입니다. 그러나 이 가운데 교회가 표적이 되고 있습니다.
Well, Christians have always been the primary target because they really threaten the ideology of the government, which hasn't changed really because it was just, Omar al-Bashir was just replaced by military strongmen who were part of the genocide that occurred against Christians. Over 2 million Christians were killed just in the south alone, and compare that to a couple 100,000 Muslims in Darfur. So people often, I think, because of the situation in Darfur that's gotten so much attention, forget that it was 10 times as many Christians that were targeted and killed by the RSF, by this Darfur militia that's now trying to vie for power in the country. So Christians are a public enemy to the government. They always have been. They're seen as a threat because of the just the military leaders that are Islamist and want to destroy them
Yeah,
and see them as their power.